Good evening, everybody. We are back with another Fins Forecast show. I'm back this week. Sorry about missing last week, but it's great to be back with you guys. We're excited for tonight's show. There's a new Super Bowl champion. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. Blowout fashion. Absolutely terrible game, actually. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what lessons the Dolphins can learn from that. And we're going to talk about how to fix the Dolphins offense tonight. It's going to be a fun show. We'll have to get into, and we will get into it right after this. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be back with another Fins Forecast show. I'm super excited for tonight, especially after missing last week. I'm ready to get back in the saddle with you guys.
It just feels right, Keith.
Yes, it does. It does. It's great. It's great to be back with you guys. Great to see your smiling, handsome faces yet again. So so how we doing tonight, Anthony? How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm doing good. We hit 100 subscribers, by the way. We definitely want to get that out in front right away. That's
Absolutely
a huge achievement for us, just having started the show in the preseason. Yeah, I'm pumped about the progress we're making. I'm pumped to talk Dolphins football yet again.
Absolutely. I'm pumped about that too. 100 subscribers. Hey, that's nothing to sneeze at, guys. So hopefully that's 100 and there's hundreds more to come. Let's hope. Josh, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great, man. Yeah, that century mark is a big thing for the show, right? Please, if you're listening to this after, if you're live, please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. It really helps out the show, helps out the channel. Was thrilled. I mean, I think I ran over to my wife faster than I've run in quite some time to show her, and she was really excited for us too. So, love doing this with you guys. You fellas are amazing, and can't wait to see where this journey takes us.
Absolutely. Well said. Taylor, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic. I don't really know why. This is probably the most nervous I've been on an episode so far. So I think it's just because, like, the content we got here today, like, we all brought it.
Yeah,
we kind of shared it.
Yes, we did.
We kind of shared our research with each other here. I didn't really look into it because I want to react fresh, but I'm really excited to get into it here today.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun show. Two things, Taylor. First, love the sweatshirt. Awesome sweatshirt.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And second, awesome mic, man. That's really cool looking.
Appreciate it, man. This thing's been collecting dust for a few years, so I'm just glad I get a chance to use it.
Nice. All right, well, let's get into it, guys. First and foremost, Super Bowl is obviously on Sunday. Eagles Chiefs. Eagles came out victorious. So what were your initial thoughts on that game? Taylor, I'll start with you.
So just quickly get this out of the way. This was something that I wasn't really excited to watch for, like, a lot of people I think are in that same boat. And up until that day, I was like, you know what? I hope the Chiefs do it. I just really don't like the Eagles. But there was something about that afternoon that I just went, yeah, you know what? Screw the Chiefs. I can't stomach another Super Bowl. And I decided to watch it, and I could not have been any happier. Like, that was the happiest I've ever been watching a blowout in a game. Well, second most, what happened to the Denver Broncos in 2023 was that was a special time.
Yeah, that was a thing of beauty, definitely. I can't say I was happy. I was not cheering for the Eagles, being from the Philadelphia area. I love listening to Eagles fans cry, man. It's one of my favorite things. And I listen to Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio.
That's gotta be horrible right now, man.
It is, dude. I actually haven't even put it on. I've been listening to Spotify all week in my car. So Anthony, what were your initial thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I had no intentions of watching this game, to be honest. I was just going to go try to find something else to do, but then there was nothing else to do. So I was like, let's turn the game on. I gotta say, in terms of just relating it to our team, it's completely and totally obvious that the trenches still win football games.
Mhm.
I mean, the Eagles dominated on the defensive line and the offensive line pretty much all night, and that led to a blowout of epic proportions. I mean, 40-22 doesn't look like that big of a blowout, but if you watch this game, it was not 40-22 in how they were playing. I mean, like it was 40-0 in how they were playing.
Yeah.
It was It was
Yeah.
an interesting game. I still enjoyed it because I really didn't want to see the Chiefs win. Patrick Mahomes I went from really loving the guy to really hating the guy over the past few years.
Mhm.
He's just gotten more and more annoying the more they win. So to see him get stomped and have them have no answer it felt a little good.
It's the Brady effect for the quarterback position. Like that's what Mahomes really. He went from, oh man, you know what, this is a really cool story, to about 3 years later going, all right, he doesn't have to go to every Super Bowl. Like, can somebody knock him out?
Yeah, I hear what you guys are saying there, and Anthony, trenches win football games, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that tonight. I'm specifically going to talk about it. So, Josh, what were your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Anthony hit it right out of the park. I think the one takeaway that I had, the big takeaway that I had was that, our D line and O line need some work, because that's what matters, right? That is how you play December, January, February football.
Yep.
Right? It's not the outside flashy Ferrari stuff. It's the, it's the big boys, right? And it gives me hope. It gave me odd hope, if that makes sense, as looking at it as a Dolphins fan, because if you can get 3 decisions correct this offseason, you can turn this team from, let's be honest, a quasi shit show to something that can produce late in cold weather and in important games. And, I was happy to see Kansas City lose. I think I enjoyed all of the pre-show stuff, all of the interviews and all of the guest hosts and all that stuff a lot more than I thought I would leading up to the Super Bowl, especially Tyreek Hill. And we'll touch on this later. Tyreek Hill coming, trying to mea culpa everyone on live TV. That kind of, eating crow, right? Talking about he's got tall girl fetish, like just all kinds of, Tyreek Hill nonsense. But
I didn't hear that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Jesus.
something I don't feel like we need to get into right now.
No, sure don't. No, we sure don't. But long story long, it was it was the outcome that I wanted. It was good.
Yeah. Just to further that point, Josh, the Eagles didn't blitz once in that game.
Mm-mm.
They rushed 3 and 4 every single defensive snap, and they made Patrick Mahomes super uncomfortable that entire game. And I remember when the Giants beat the Patriots back in 2007. I know we were all happy to see that result. And it was the same kind of thing. Giants rushed 4, dropped 7, and made Brady uncomfortable the entire game. That's how you win in December, January, February, right there. So the Eagles put the blueprint together, and that's what the Dolphins have to aspire to do from here on out. So with that, let's get into other NFL news. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Jalen Hurts named Super Bowl MVP.
Criminal.
Yeah, I don't know. He's actually one of the good guys. Like I actually like Jalen Hurts a lot as a dude, as a person. I loved his interaction with Saquon Barkley at the end of that game, where he basically said that Saquon Barkley was the missing link, the missing piece to that team. It's, I don't cheer for the Eagles, but they're a tough team not to cheer for. They really are, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll say this. The reason I said it was criminal is not because it's not an indictment on Hurts in any capacity, right? But Josh Sweat, in my opinion, was single-handedly. I mean, unfortunately, and I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and there is a lot of smoke for this comment. But The MVP awards now are quarterback awards. So
Yeah.
whatever quarterback wins, you're the insert, game MVP, and that's not what it should be, right? Because
Well, you
I
go
think
back. I was going to say you just go back to that Patriots Falcons Super Bowl, like
Mhm.
28-3, and I'm not taking anything away from Brady in that Super Bowl, but I think James White had 20 catches. It felt like in that
Mhm.
game, including
Yeah.
the game-winning touchdown. And yeah, like how does he not get MVP for that? And yeah, I agree with you, Josh. Not a shot to Hurts, but it does suck because it does feel like more of a quarterback award these days.
yeah,
220 yards wins MVP. This ain't 1962.
it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, he
It's
did have
crazy.
70 yards rushing as well, I think. But still,
But you can't. There's in no universe can you say that his impact on the game is more than Josh Sweat. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not even in the same atmosphere, same realm, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree. But like if you're going to give out an MVP for that game, Josh Sweat deserves it. Jalen Carter deserves it.
Mhm.
Milton Williams. Like that entire line was just super disruptive to Patrick Mahomes. The entire, if you're going to give out an MVP, like the entire Eagles defensive line, in my opinion, were the ones that earned that. All right, so let's move on from the Super Bowl. Unless you guys have something else you want to say about it.
nah.
We're going to move on to the New Orleans Saints. They have officially hired a head
right.
coach.
Yeah.
They've officially hired a head coach. They have hired Kellen Moore, the Eagles offensive coordinator, as their head coach.
Such a
Look,
Saints move.
The only reason
Really
why
is.
I don't like Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator personally, but I will say this: that's good for us because the other
Mhm.
candidate for that job was Anthony Weaver.
That's a big get.
So I was happy to see Kellen Moore get hired there because I wasn't ready to let Anthony Weaver go. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Anthony, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, truly, I was never actually that worried about it. I mean, first year defensive coordinator to hire. I mean, it would be a very Saints-esque move to hire him as their head coach after that, as is hiring Kellen Moore as your head coach.
Mhm.
Sorry, Saints fans, but yeah, I just I wasn't too concerned about it.
Fair enough. I was very concerned actually because, well, there were two guys that were mentioned for that job, and it's not a super desirable job in my opinion. Like they are
No.
still in salary cap hell, and they're going to be in salary cap hell for the very foreseeable future.
The Tannenbaum effect.
Yes, sir.
But Mike McCarthy withdrew himself from the job. He would rather sit out a year than coach the Saints.
I mean, that's all
Can't
you
really
need to
blame
know.
It's a losing proposition, though, in my opinion. Like coaching a team like that, coaching a team where you can't really bring in any free agents, and it's just it's rough down there in New Orleans. They really mortgaged feels like their next 10 years to try and win while Drew Brees was still under center down there.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if you had talent on the team, but they don't even have any talent on the team.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Barring
And
a
the
couple
handful,
guys.
and the handful of talent you do have are always in trouble outside or off the field, so it's or injured.
Yeah. So, all right. So finally, we're going to move on to Dolphins hired Bobby Slowick as their
I
passing game
this.
coordinator.
Hell yes, their senior passing game coordinator.
Yes.
Making up job titles.
Yeah, pretty much. What do you want to be called if you come here? Oh, you got it done.
So, so Josh told us his thoughts on that. Taylor, what are your thoughts on this Bobby Slowick hire?
I was just going to add in, I'm very excited about this hire too. I don't think there's a lot that he could do that could really hurt the offense, to be honest. So, but at the same time, I do want to point out that when he got fired, Texans fans were pretty excited by this because they were ready to move on. And this was coming from the 2024 offseason, 2023, 2024 season, where he was a head coaching candidate.
One of the top ones that when we were talking about him coming potentially if the team wanted to move away from Mike McDaniel.
And instead, now a year later, he is sitting in the coaching carousel, and he ends up coming to Miami in what just feels like a advisor, like consultant kind of role, which is just fantastic. We don't have to free up a spot like at quarterback or offensive coordinator or anything like that. So that's why I think it's just a really good hire.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also helps that he has a working relationship with Mike McDaniel already. So these two guys know each other.
Is it San Fran? Is that where they're?
Yeah, they were from San
And
Fran.
Washington, I believe. That Washington coaching staff,
Yeah.
like 2012, somehow continues to pay off.
Wild.
And like, all those guys in Washington back in 2012, they were all toddlers back then. So it's pretty crazy to see how that coaching tree still continues to bear fruits. Anthony, what are your thoughts on that hire?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's just it shows how fickle the NFL is. So, I mean, he turns a rookie C.J. Stroud into the most amazing rookie performance we've seen from a quarterback in ever.
Well, until last year.
Until Jaden Daniels one ups it the next year. And then the next year, they struggle a little bit. The second year, sophomore slump for Stroud, and he's gone. So I think it's a hell of an addition. A passing game coordinator to me says that he's going to work with the entire passing game, the tight ends, the wide receivers, the quarterback. Like it's going to be getting them all on the same page and connect it rather than having this dysfunctional thing that we had last year. So I'm excited to see how that works out.
And don't forget, this is really cool. Not football related, but he joins his brother because his brother's already on our staff, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. All right, so tonight, the main topic of discussion tonight is going to be it's going to be surrounding the offense. So basically, Taylor earlier on in the week sent out you want to call it a memo to all of us,
a show memo.
Yeah, asking us to name a position group that we've identified as being a serious need for the Dolphins, and kind of why it's a need, how it's a need, and how not specific players necessarily, but how we would go about fixing that specific need. So we all took our own position groups and we're kind of running with them. So I'm going to start with you, Taylor.
Would you mind starting with Josh, just because I do not have my show notes up right now? That's
Fair
great.
enough.
This.
All right.
Thought I did.
It's all good. Josh, I will start with you.
Yeah. So, really, so I took kind of the low hanging fruit of all of us, I think, with the backup quarterback position. Right. And how I approached this was I approached it as if I was talking to the GM and laying out a plan to solve for the backup quarterback position, right? So I went through, and we'll get into it. Sit back and relax, guys, because I'm about to go into a bunch of stats. We're going to talk about league averages versus backup quarterbacks, and then we'll get into how I, quote unquote, think we should solve this in various ways, right? So looking back at last year, right, I'm going to go through all four of our quarterbacks and kind of the key stats that they had for last season, all right? So Tua Tagovailoa played 11 games. He started all 11. He completed 291 passes out of 399 attempts for a 72.9% completion percentage for 2,867 passing yards, which averaged just over 7.2 yards per attempt. 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. He took 21 sacks, which we'll speak to another position later on. He had a 101.4 passer rating, 17 rush attempts. That's 16 too many. 49 rushing yards, 17 concussions. No, I'm kidding. 0 rushing touchdowns, 7 fumbles, which he lost 2 of them. Okay. So looking at his stats as a starter, albeit he only played 11 games due to, was it 2 concussions? Is that what it was? There was concussion and something else. I can't remember.
A hip injury.
Excuse me. That's what it was. He led the team only playing 11. He led them in just about every major statistical category, right? And we'll get to league some of these key ones versus league averages. And I apologize, I'm looking off camera. I have all of this written down, so there's no way I was memorizing all of this. Now we get into the backups, where I think a true, genuine position of need is, right? So Tyler Huntley played 5 games, started the 5 that he played in. right? He had 86 completions out of 133 attempts, completed 64.7% of his passes for just under 800, so 829 yards, 6.2 per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 15 sacks taken for a passer rating of 80.1, right? Now, granted, when he stepped in, I was high on him in certain ways. I did not think that in any capacity he should be a regular starting quarterback, right? But I thought with his scrambling ability and what he has on tape, for lack of a better term, over the last handful of seasons, you could see that there's something there to work with. I was very wrong. Horribly wrong. I'm not saying that he can't turn into a serviceable backup. I'm not saying he won't even be on the team. Maybe he is. Who knows? But yeah, I was very wrong about him. Skylar Thompson played 3 games, started 21 completions out of 33 attempts, 63.6% completion percentage for 187 passing yards.
Oh God.
On 21 completions, 187 yards, 5.7 yards per attempts, 0 tuds, zero interceptions. So, hey, there's that. Maybe that's what maybe that's why Pittsburgh signed him. I don't know. 6 sacks taken for a 78.7 passer rating. He's horrible. I don't even think he is a good college quarterback right now, let alone any kind of serviceable, NFL quarterback, in my opinion. And my issue with Skylar, and I think we can all agree on this, and I'll pause after I get through Tim Boyle so we can chat about it before I get into my kind of league average comparisons and into how I fix this position. Skylar, I felt got the short end of the stick. I'm glad he's off the team. Sorry. I mean, nothing personal, but I feel like Mike McDaniel's stubbornness with Thompson really put him at a disadvantage, right? I think we can all agree, and those that are watching and those that are listening later, I think we can all agree that Skylar was not ready and is not ready and should not be ready. Should not be on the field right now, right? He would be in the G League in the NBA, in my opinion, right? Does not belong on a bench. And Mike McDaniel stubbornness with, he's been in my system for 3 years, and this is someone that, can do it. I'm not going to change the offense for a completely different player than Tua Tagovailoa. We're going to just plop him in there and he's going to do well. I think put him at a disadvantage, and it shows. Then we get to poor old Tim Boyle. I want to give the guy a hug, but see you later. 2 games played, 0 games started, 15 of 26 for 15 completions for 26 attempts, 57.7% completion percentage for 153 yards, 5.9 per attempt, 0 tuds, 0 interceptions, 1 sack taken for a 74.7 passer rating. Tim is what Tim is, right?
Yeah.
He's a name on a roster. He's your 4th quarterback. Break glass in case of emergency and hope to God you never have to, right? Unfortunately for us, our starter decided that he's a running back from time to time, and coming back from a concussion decided to scramble to get the first down in the red zone against the Bills and dive headfirst into a safety. Was it Damar Hamlin? Damar Hamlin's knee to get shucken up again. I mean, so, okay. Tim Boyle had to play. Fine. What does the 3 backups stuff tell us, right? So, I mean, overall, you look at the Dolphins room. I mean, they face challenges. They're filled with issues. They're, unfortunately, we had so many backups and so many players that were not ready take meaningful snaps for us in big games. I mean, look at Huntley. There was no way he should have played 5 games for us, but he had to, excuse me, because our starter got injured. But unfortunately, these were the players that we determined should be on the team. And that opens up a whole nother line of questioning, which is why we're doing this exercise, right? So I'm going to pause here before I get into some of the other fun stuff that I have for these quarterbacks. And this was a really, really fun exercise where I compared key stats to league averages and kind of what their comparison was to those, whether it was average, below average, or above average. But what are your guys' thoughts on the backup quarterback position? I mean, I think it's a consensus that it's bad, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think first and foremost, Josh, it is worth pointing out that Tyler Huntley was kind of thrown into the fire here. Like he was picked up, kind of on the fly off of the Ravens practice squad, and thrust into this starting position without ever really learning the offense.
Yeah, true.
Just to be fair to him, that doesn't mean he was good. That doesn't mean that his performance should be excused. It's just in the interest of fairness. I wanted to point that out.
Oh, and I'm with you 1,000%, right? I mean, short end of the stick, meet Tyler Huntley, right?
Yeah. And as far as Skylar Thompson goes, I actually had more hope for him than anybody on this show. He started that playoff game against the Bills 2 years ago, and almost, Dolphins were kind of close to a victory in that one. So, I had a little bit of hope for Skylar Thompson, and then I watched him play against the Seahawks, and that was rough. That was tough to watch. And basically from that point on, it was like, okay, I don't know what we're going to do until Tua comes back. This is why we're talking about backup quarterback right now. I don't want to feel that way again. I don't want to feel, like we're caught in the middle of the desert without any water. Like what the hell are we going to do until Tua comes back? I don't want to feel that way. So this is why we're identifying backup quarterback as a need. So,
100%. I'm 100% with you, buddy. Seriously.
So I don't know how you guys feel about it. Anthony, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, overall throughout the whole year, I've been curious as to how much of it is coaching and how much of it is these guys are just not very good quarterbacks. I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Very clearly, our coach has done a good job with Tua. It's the best he's ever been in his entire career, so he knows how to coach a quarterback. But is there such a thing as your system being too much based on your quarterback? Probably not. Like your QB1 is your QB1 for a reason. Like you should base everything on him. The backup definitely needs addressing. I am curious to see how Josh is going to address it because I don't know what the answer is.
Yep. What about you, Taylor? Any thoughts before I get on to the league averages?
No. The only thing I will add is just Huntley, like you guys said, thrown into the fire, and based on everything that you've shared so far, if there's anybody we bring back in a role, I would want it to be Huntley.
Why would you say that?
Obviously,
can you let a guy cook, please?
Well, I'm just saying, obviously, like Skylar Thompson's off the board, but ideally the thing would be like Huntley in the QB3, but that still leaves the position of need, and that is backup quarterback QB2. So, Josh, I was trying to lead you into it.
Yeah,
so,
but you spoiled a third of my bullet points at the end. Kidding. I'm just It's fine. It's fine. Right. I think it's well known. But anyway, so league averages, right? So again, these are approximations, right? So for those crazy stat heads, please don't write. I mean, you can write me if you want to, but I promise you I won't respond. So I looked at three major kind of areas, right, that I think are very indicative of how a quarterback plays, right? And the talent level that he has. And that's completion percentage, yards per attempt, and passer rating, right? I feel like that's kind of a relatively a universal. If those three are good, you have a good guy. If those three are mediocre, he's okay. And if they're bad, he's bad, right? So on a league level, for all of the quarterbacks, for every single quarterback that took a snap, I think it was over I forgot what I think it was over 50 snaps. I think it was, and I looked at those, right? Because I didn't want to take a guy that threw 1 for 100% because I feel like it skews things. But the approximate league average completion percentage was 66%. The approximate yards per attempt was around 7.5, and passer rating was 93.6. Okay, so I took Tua, Huntley, Skylar, and Tim's stats for those three, and I compared them to what the league average was to give us an idea how they stacked up against the average, right? So from Tua's standpoint, his completion percentage was 72.9. Like I said earlier, the league average is 66. I graded that, if you will, at above average, right? Yards per attempt was 7.2. Mind you, 11 game sample size, an offense that decided all it was going to do was throw balls 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage on screen plays as an extension of the run game and hope for the best. So yards per attempt for Tua was 7.2, league average was 7.5, so slightly below average, right? But with context, with an asterisk, if you will. Passer rating of 104.4, league average was 93.6. So I considered that well above, I'm probably not well above average, but above average, right? So as a whole, Tua, who's our starter, Anthony, to your point, played very well. And if your starter goes down, especially a starter that you're paying the amount of money you're paying him, your season's kind of screwed. Sorry, it is what it is, right? Tyler Huntley, completion percentage, 64.7 versus the league average of 66, below average. Yards per attempt, 6.2 compared to the league average of 7.5, below average. There's a trend here if you're noticing. Passer rating, 80.1 versus 93.6, below average. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it does not get any better. Skylar Thompson for completion percentage, for yards per attempt, and for passer rating, all below average, well below average in his case. And Tim Boyle, same across for all three, right? So we have a starting quarterback in Tagovailoa, Tua, who was above average in just, and I'm only listing the three. I think I did 5, but I only listed the 3 big ones, was either above average, slightly above average, or just below average on one of them across the board and compared to the league average. And then you have all of our backups, which combined took meaningful snaps, played 7 or 8 games out of, or 7 games. I can do math, I promise. All below average on all of the key metrics that determines whether your quarterback is good or bad, right? In hindsight. Not great. Not great at all. And that is why, again, not to beat the horse with a stick, this is why this is a key, for me, was a key position of need. How do I fix it? Right? If I was talking to my GM and my GM was like, dude, I will follow whatever your word to the letter of the law. You tell me how we fix it and I will do it. These were the 3 main things that I came up with. And in chat, please feel free to argue, disagree, say I hit a home run, or tell me how you would solve this. We want to hear how you would fix this, right? How you would fix and solve the backup quarterback position.
No, cue the Tua comments. Here they come.
Yeah, here they come. Right, let's trade them. Right, let's go sign Joe Burrow. How I would fix it, first of all, it would be I would allocate a later round draft pick. I am in Anthony's corner on this. I would draft a quarterback every year. That does not mean you draft them high. I mean, unless you're there, unless it's Archie Manning, for example. Kidding. Or whatever the hell the kid's name is in Texas.
Not kidding. You shouldn't be kidding.
I'm not. He's awesome. Anyways, but allocate a later round pick. We have a lot of them. Take a flyer. You genuinely never know. And best case scenario, I'm sorry. Best case scenario, he pans out and turns out to be a great quarterback, and you have a choice. Do you keep 2 on a big contract, or do you trade him and keep the guy? Or you do what the Patriots did a few times, a la Jimmy G, and you take a quarterback, you develop him, and then you trade him for higher assets, right? So always, every year I would be allocating a later round draft pick to at this position. I would also re-sign Huntley as QB3. Taylor. I'm kidding. Obviously it is determined on what contract and how those negotiations go and how long it is and what where are the triggers in the contract from a money standpoint. Is it very, incentive laden, or is it kind of here's everything up front? We never see you on the field kind of thing. So if the contract is team friendly, and I hate using that word because I'm very pro player getting their cash, but if it is team friendly, I'm all for it. Fine, bring him back, set him on the bench, and hope to God you never have to see him. Let him stay in our system and develop, and maybe he can turn into something that we can turn into another asset, right? And this is where, and this last point, my third point on the backup quarterback position, is where I really believe this is how we solve this, right? The other 2 were just kind of padding the stats, for lack of a better term. I think a high-priced free agent backup is what we need. I think that is the way you solve this. I would expect that the Dolphins, at this point in time, need to be either leading the league or one of the top teams in the league at cost per backup quarterback, right? I mean, I'm thinking like let's call it 6 to 8 million average contract per year type assets to a backup quarterback, which is something you never really want to do. The unfortunate part about all of this is we have an injury prone quarterback who's awesome when he's on the field. That cannot be argued. He is awesome when he's on the field. The only thing is when he's on the field, right? And I don't think we can go into another year with Tim Boyles and with Skylar Thompsons of the world and with, the Huntleys of the world. You have to snag a good quarterback. Now the question comes, do you take an older veteran, or do you grab one of the younger kind of busts, if you will, the higher draft pick busts that need a change of scenery? That is a question, and we will answer that on later shows. We are keeping this very high level, but those are the type of things you look into to solve this position, and that is what I would be recommending to a GM should he ask what the hell I'm at. What would I do?
We need like an applause soundbite after the end of
Well, I'm gonna chime in here, Josh. I agree with everything you said. I think when you have a quarterback like Tua, and you have a quarterback who's as oft injured as Tua is, you need to get a good backup in there. You can't just basically punt these games where Tua is not in there, which is essentially what the Dolphins did by putting Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, who hadn't learned the offense yet, in, instead of Tua. So yeah, I don't know what quarterbacks are going to be out there necessarily. I don't know what quarterbacks are going to be available in later rounds that might fit what we do, and we'll get into that in later episodes, like you said. But I think it's super important to get a good backup in here. So, bravo, love what you said.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening to my stats. I'm a stat head. I love it.
You guys have any more comments on the backup quarterback position?
So the only thing I'd add is I'm not sure about Huntley plus a draft pick plus free agent allocation there. That really seems like we are going overkill, but I kind of get why, right? Because this is something that has got to be handled. So if you're going to fix it, I'd rather be over prepared and have too many options to where we probably have to cut a 7th round draft pick or Tyler Huntley, depending on who wins that.
Well, and that was my thought process, right? Is it whoever wins out between that late round draft pick, insert random name, and Huntley, whoever wins out is on the practice squad and the other guy's out, right? I mean, that was kind of the thought process. So you need to load the chamber going into practice and going into kind of the off-season plan that they have. Let them battle it out, and may the best man win.
And, it's also worth pointing out the Dolphins played 4 quarterbacks this year. Didn't want to. Ideally you stick with 1 or 2. But the Dolphins had 4 quarterbacks who, saw the field for them this year.
Yeah, and I would assume that third quarterback is on the practice squad as the emergency kind of injured guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I heard a stat somewhere that the past 5 years there's been 60 plus starting quarterbacks every year. That's how often they go down.
That's wild.
Right? Yeah.
That's a wild stat.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.
And before we move on, because the last 3 episodes and our next episode too is really about like setting the table for the off season for us. Like, that's something we talked about off air a lot. And I have the grades that we've had for the offense and defense. Anthony put together the averages for us.
Nerd.
We had a C- grade for the quarterback position. So in our opinion, this is a position of need. And by the way, I don't know if you said this, Keith, this is in no particular order. Don't worry. The interior offensive line is coming and Keith will be handling it.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes.
Good luck, buddy. It's a tough one.
Actually, you segued right into me because I was going to go next with the interior offensive line.
Hit it, buddy.
So, look, guys, I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say by saying I do realize that backup quarterback is a need. I do realize that the position groups that Anthony and Taylor are going to go through are most certainly positions of need. But in my estimation, offensive guard is the number one need for the Miami Dolphins this offseason.
It's not even close.
I've been pounding the table since last offseason for the Dolphins to address the offensive guard. You know, the writing was on the table. The writing was on the wall. We were going to be losing Robert Hunt. Okay, fine. How are you going to replace him? So, Taylor, you know, you mentioned that we gave our grades a couple of episodes ago for the offensive line. Our cumulative grade for the offensive line between the four of us was C-. But that's with Teron Armstead, that's with Aaron Brewer, that's with Austin Jackson, that's with the tackles in the center. I'm just going to do a quick exercise here. Just going to go round the horn here. If we're just doing guard, what position are you giving, Josh?
What grade am I giving?
What grade are you giving the guards?
D-.
Taylor?
Oh, it's an F.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even close.
Anthony?
Yeah, it's an F. Josh is too nice.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, you know, I liked the way Eichenberg played when he had somebody competent next to him, which is the only reason it's not an F, right? Because there is something from that unit that is salvageable, right? I'm not saying that Eichenberg is anywhere near or should be a starter. So please, fans, don't lace into me for that. But as a 6th, 7th offensive lineman that can play at just about every position, should you need him, I think he was a serviceable project that should remain on the team, in my opinion. But go ahead. Sorry.
They already sent you 10 tweets about how much
I know my phone's blowing up already. The chat on social media is not happy with that comment. Sorry, guys.
Well, I gave him an F as well. So let's, you know, that's pretty much unanimous. The guards were terrible. But Keith, how terrible were they? Let me tell you.
Tell us.
Let me tell you how terrible they were. Now, the Dolphins as a team had 31 holding calls last year. That was last in the NFL. For 297 yards. Also last. Now I'm going to go through just Pro Football Focus grades here.
That's so bad.
Now, Robert Jones had 7 holding calls against him alone. Liam Eichenberg only had 3 holding calls, 1 face mask, 5 false starts.
Yowza.
Those are our 2 guards right there. Per Pro Football Focus, Robert Jones ranked 94th out of 135 yards in the NFL. Now, for you mathematicians out there, there are 64 starting guards in the NFL. That means that that there were 32 guards. 32 backup guards, presumably, that were better than Robert Jones.
Say that again for those in the back that can't hear you.
Yeah. That means that there were 32 backup guards that were better than Robert Jones. Robert Jones ranked 113th out of 135 in penalties against, and he was the better of the 2. Liam Eichenberg ranked 106th out of 135, according to Pro Football Focus.
Wow.
And he ranked 125 out of 135 in penalties.
All right, I retract my previous statement. F across the board. Liam Eichenberg can go away too.
So quick as well. Who's the bigger hater? Is it Keith with Robert Jones, or is it Josh with Josh Poyer?
Josh.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah, it's not. It's
Josh
really
Jordan Poyer.
Jordan Poyer is. Yeah, no. We'll talk about him next week, fellas. Don't worry.
But
We'll get brought up, yes.
But you're very right, Taylor. I am not a fan of Robert Jones, but he actually graded out better than Liam Eichenberg, which I didn't see coming, to be honest with you. So, you know, we go into, and I went through all the playoff teams. I went through the guards on all the playoff teams, the starting guards on all the playoff teams. There was only one guy that ranked lower than Robert Jones and or Liam Eichenberg. That was Bram Brendel from the Minnesota Vikings, ranked 98th.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But, you know, you go through, like, the Eagles. Mekhi Becton, 21st out of 135. Landon Dickerson, 13th. The Chiefs, Trey Smith, 14th. Joe Tooney, 12th. You know, you go through these guards, and it's incumbent upon a front office to put a strong offensive line in front of your quarterback. as Anthony said earlier on in this show, look, this game has evolved over the course of its, call it 100 years of history. It's evolved from 3 yards in a cloud of dust to, Vince Lombardi and then Don Coryell and, Bill Walsh into the game it is today. But one thing has been a constant in football from the beginning, from its inception, and this game is won and lost in the trenches. Now, let's put a 6'1" oft-injured quarterback behind two of the worst guards in the NFL. He's not very fleet of foot. He's not particularly good at escaping pressure. This is a recipe for disaster, boys.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Understatement of the year there.
So what I want to see moving forward, I don't want to see Robert Jones starting games for the Dolphins next year. I don't want to see Liam Eichenberg starting games for the Dolphins next year. I want them to revamp this room. I want them to completely tear it down and build it back up. Last offseason, I was saying the same thing. I wanted them to draft a Graham Barton, a Jackson Powers Johnson, a Cooper Beebe in the first round. I wanted them to draft a guard in the first round. They ended up drafting Chop Robinson, and I was pissed. I'll be the first to admit I was pissed. I was Superfly TNT. I was the Guns of the Navarone. I was pissed.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. Chop Robinson came in, and by the end of the season, he was the Dolphins' only viable pass rusher. Absolutely. Yeah. So I was wrong about that, but I wasn't wrong. The Dolphins still need to remake this room. How do I go about fixing it? Look, 2 or 3 free agents. Maybe take out a flyer on a guy who has either been injured to this point in his career or has underperformed. And most importantly, the Dolphins had the 13th pick in the first round. Use it on guard, please.
I have one in mind if you guys aren't aware.
Wait, you do? Oh.
Never mentioned it.
Does his name rhyme with Schmill Ramble?
Yep. Yep. That's one of them.
Yeah. No, there are plenty of offensive guards. There are plenty of players the Dolphins can draft at 13 that will be available to them at 13 at their biggest position of need. Don't overthink this, Chris Greer. Take the best guy available. Take the best guard available. Plug him into the lineup and watch him cook for 10 years. That's what needs to happen right now.
Yeah. What's really crazy is that our tackles and our center are actually solid.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even if Armstead retires, which, okay. I'm kind of 50-50. Like, okay. We already have a replacement who I'm not saying he's, Patrick Paul can be the best left tackle in the league, but serviceable.
Well, I was going to get into tackle real quick because I did Pro Football Focus grades on the tackles for the Dolphins. Austin Jackson ranked 76 out of 141. Not great, not terrible, about average. Okay, fine.
It's kind of what you expected from a 52-year-old oft-injured left tackle.
58th in the run, 82nd in the pass. So he's a much better run blocker, and we kind of saw that play out in the season. When he went down, the Dolphins' running game really suffered. Kendall Lamb was actually 35th out of 141.
Yeah, he's solid.
Much better in the pass than the run. He was 10th in the pass, 109th in the run. So again, once he replaced Austin Jackson, the running game suffered, and the passing game, he did a good job. Teron Armstead. Anybody want to guess what his Pro Football Focus ranking was?
Who?
Top 5, right?
Teron Armstead. Anybody want to guess what his Pro Football Focus ranking was?
Top 15?
Top 5.
Taylor's right. Top 5. He was number 3 in the NFL. 4th against the run, 8th against the pass.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Brewer. Oh, you were talking about Brewer, your first comment, right?
No, I was talking about Teron Armstead.
Jackson. He was talking about Jackson. The comment you made about
being retired, about going retired. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I got confused. My bad.
And Patrick Paul, kind of a rough rookie season. He ranked 127th out of 141. 139th against the run, 93rd against the pass. Hopefully he continues to learn and grow under Teron Armstead. Hopefully Teron Armstead comes back for another season. If Teron Armstead wants to come back for another season, you obviously accept it.
Mhm.
And Aaron Brewer ranked 9th out of centers in the NFL last year.
Oh, I was just looking that up. I was curious.
Yeah, he ranked 9th. So our tackles were okay. Our tackles
Mhm.
were, they were solid. Our center was solid, much better against the run than he was against the pass, which is why you need to get a couple of guards in here who
Mhm.
have iron heads, man. They are brick walls. They aren't going to be pushed back into your 6'1" off injured, not fleet of foot quarterback's lap.
Mhm.
There are things that Tua does well, which is throw accuracy and anticipation. You give him time to cook, he's going to cook. There are things that he does not do well, which is escape pressure, which is unfortunately stay healthy. He doesn't always have the best pocket presence. So you need to put an offensive line in front of him that accentuates his needs and hides his flaws. Draft the guard with the number 13th overall pick. Draft the guard later on in the draft, the 4th or 5th round pick, as a sort of a project type of guy. Bring in a couple of guys in free agency, revamp this guard room. I yield my time.
Now, when you're fixing the guards, right, with your free agency, would you go top end free agent, or would you get like middle, like two middle of the pack to high ish?
I would get a high end
cost
free agent who's probably in his early to mid 30s. A veteran who's maybe not necessarily the long-term answer at the position, but he will be a veteran presence, step in there, do a solid, admirable job, and maybe mentor younger guys underneath of him.
So can I ask you a question? And so if I heard you right, and I'm sorry if I didn't, you do 2 or 3 free agents and allocate a 13th overall pick just for the guard spot.
And a later round pick. Yes.
So then I guess my question would be, let's say we draft, and I'm not going to say names because we said we wouldn't. Let's say you draft a guard at 13. I would expect him to start, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One on one side or the other. Then your first high priced free agency goes to the other side.
Yep.
Then you have a high priced free agent backup.
No, not a high price free agent backup.
Okay.
A Jack Driscoll type of player. Okay. A guy who can step in and do an admirable job, a decent backup, a jack of all trades, if you will. That's where I would go with this. Maybe bring back Liam Eichenberg as a backup. You don't want him starting for you
as a number, as like your 7th.
Yes.
All right, 7th offensive lineman. Couple of Pete's takes here, fellas. This is a spicy one. Hello, gentlemen. The 2 moves that will make us great again that needs to happen immediately is to get rid of Tua and Brewer. Fix these 2 positions and watch us win with this roster. Pete, really appreciate you. Yeah, really appreciate you joining the show and for commenting, and please continue. But with as much respect as I can muster, I actually think Tua and Brewer work together. I mean, they have their flaws. They're not perfect players. And unfortunately, unless we decide in the 23rd hour to pull the lever to get off of Tua's contract this offseason, Tua's our quarterback, right? And Brewer does what Brewer does. He's ranked 9th to Keith's point out of all centers. And it's not the biggest positions of need, which is what the show is covering on the offensive side, right? But, if there was an upgrade opportunity at the center position, we could talk about it because Brewer can play guard, right?
Yeah. But I don't think there is an upgrade opportunity at the center position. But we should also think about bringing in a bona fide backup center as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because what would have happened if Brewer would have gotten hurt this year?
Yeah, it would have been tits up.
It would have been Liam Eichenberg behind center. That center.
Well, he couldn't have been because he was playing guard.
Yeah, I don't know what they would have done. So that's another thing the Dolphins need to do. They need to improve their depth because, they either just injuries happen. Injuries seem to happen to the Dolphins more so than a lot of teams.
They could have put Jackson Carman at center. He'd be fine.
Oh gosh. I was really hoping his name wasn't going to come up in this show, Anthony.
He's good, right? No?
How dare you?
It was
Yeah,
shocking to me.
Keith's favorite Dolphins player.
I gave him a
Put
jock.
that
I
on
gave
there
him a
if he
jock
bothers.
strap during one of the games, and
Poor guy's catching strays for
yeah,
no reason.
Ash is like, you really want to give him a jock strap? Like that doesn't seem fair. It's fair. He was terrible.
There's kind of a reason. That dude was a high draft pick.
He was the
Look.
second round pick of the Bengals.
To get us
Well.
kind of back on track with the offensive line thing, though, I want to bring this up as well. Two things up as like an interesting potential thing we could do at the guard position. One is Isaiah Wynn on the table for you guys as a name to potentially bring back in a backup role. I know he did not play much, but
In a strictly backup role, maybe Taylor. And
Mhm.
like you said, we were going to talk about names today. In a strictly backup role, I would consider it. But he did play decently in 2023 before he went down with injury. But he's also a guy who hasn't stayed healthy like at all. He steps on the field. He steps on the field. He's more injury prone than Tua. I mean, let's call a spade here.
Mhm.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, was Austin Jackson. You brought him up. I think he is a really good tackle. We found a spot for him to play, and it took him a while to get to right tackle. We played him pretty much all over the place. It wasn't working out. But I think at this point in his career, would you three be up, and listeners, you too, for if the opportunity arose for us to get a starting tackle instead of a guard, would you guys be more willing to have somebody like Austin Jackson actually move inside to right guard? Or
No.
do you guys think that's a non-starter?
Anthony, chime in on this.
No, we finally got him in a good position. Like we finally got him playing well. It took 5 years or whatever. I don't want to mess with it now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd say
Absolutely agree,
I'd say the only. Well, maybe I don't want to say this.
He can't
Excuse
anyways
me.
because he's dying.
No, I can't. Maybe that's the sign, right? But I'd say the only caveat would be if that was a decision that was made. Now, it's not one that I would make. It's not one Anthony or Taylor. I don't want to speak for you. Probably.
No,
don't
I'm
make
just
it either.
bringing up the question
Right?
because we're on the offensive line. This is all about let's just put
Yep.
our heads together. And
Yep.
How do we
with
get
you.
the best starting five out there? I
Yeah,
get where
I'm
you're
with you.
coming
So
from.
the only caveat or asterisk or pick a term that I would say with that is he needs to stay on the right side. So if you were going to move him at guard for whatever reason, not something that we are advocating for, it would only be a right guard position. You would never, because it works, right? His drop sets, his punt, all of his timing is on the right side. Leave him there, right?
Yeah.
Not something I would do though.
Yeah. I mean, but I certainly understand where you're coming from, Taylor. If you're going to get the best starting five out there, you bring in a tackle, maybe you consider it. But honestly, what Anthony said was spot on for me. Like,
Nailed it.
it took you 3 years to find a position that this guy could call home. And now you're going to rip him out of that position and put him into another one. I don't like it.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to, unless you guys have more you guys want to say on the offensive line. I know there's going to be a lot said this offseason by all of us on the offensive line. But I think it's time for us to move on. I think it's time for us to move on to the next position group, and that's going to be Taylor.
So I have two positions I'm covering here, and the first one I want to bring up is the tight end room, and more specifically, this is a tight end two opposite of Jonnu Smith, and also some tight end depth. All the things I got here were from ESPN stats and PFF grades. So just going through the tight end room real quick, we got Jonnu Smith. The age he'll be at the start of next season will be 30. He played 17 games, a total of 626 snaps. He was first on the team with 88 receptions. He was second in receiving yards with 884. Had 10 yards per catch, which was fourth on the team. And he was also first on the team for touchdowns with 8. And he had a PFF pass blocking grade of 69.6 and a run blocking grade of 40.5. So, and also total penalties, he had 6. So, and his free agency status is in 2026. It's voided. So, the big note on him is he is on a team-friendly contract right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he, as you saw from the stats, as you saw from being a Dolphins fan and watching the games, he was arguably the best offensive player we had this season, other than Devon Achane. So we have absolutely nothing to worry about in that regard. Moving on to Durham Smythe, and this is where I think the issues start to pop up and where I think we'll really start to talk about it. He will be 30 at the start of next season, played 17 total games, 365 snaps, 9 catches, 53 yards, 5.9 yard per catch, 0 touchdowns, a 53.6 pass blocking grade, and a 52.3 run blocking grade. He had 3 penalties, and his contract is up in 2026. Now, his base salary does jump up about $1 million to $3 million this year, I think. But from what I've seen, that doesn't appear to be any guarantees left in that deal. So if we wanted to move on, I think it is very feasible for us to do so. We have next Julian Hill. He will be 25 at the start of next season. Played 16 games, 515 total snaps, 12 receptions, 100 yards, 8.3 yards per catch, 0 touchdowns, a 51.5 pass blocking grade, a 41.0 run blocking grade.
Ugh.
He had 7 total penalties,
Jesus.
which was tied for third most on the offense, by the way. And we brought up the offensive line earlier. I really like Brewer, don't get me wrong, but Brewer had a lot of penalties. I forgot to bring that up. He will be a free agent in 2026 as a restricted free agent. As an undrafted free agent, Hill is under a very cheap contract, and if it does come down to either Smythe or Hill, I would assume we end up keeping Hill just because financially it makes more sense. And I'm not going to really get into the last 2 guys. It's Tanner Connor and it's Jack Stoll. Jack Stoll is already going to be a free agent, and Tanner Connor will be a free agent in 2026 as a restricted free agent. In terms of Tanner Connor, it's more so of a developmental guy that we've been trying to develop for years. Jack Stoll, I doubt we'll be bringing him back. So before I get into what I would do to fix it, I just want to get you guys' thoughts real quick.
I mean, it's easy for me. Go ahead, Anthony. Sorry.
Yeah, I really thought Tanner Connor showed something in the preseason the past 2 years. He just can't stay healthy, which is really unfortunate. He's also an undrafted free agent. Julian Hill might be the only guy that anybody in this panel hates more than Josh hates Jordan Poyer, and that's Keith up above me. He loves Julian Hill. It's his best friend.
He's my favorite player.
They go out for barbecue and cheesesteaks every weekend.
That's the problem.
But I agree. Like, the current unit behind Jonnu is a little trash, and by a little, I mean a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I look at it just like I did the backup quarterback position. We have one good player and a shit ton of bad ones. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss, but that's the spade that we're played, right? And I was very, very, I can't say very enough, very wrong on Julian Hill. If you guys go back and look, right, at one of our very first offseason shows that we did, yours truly, this giant tool up here on the top right of your show, was banging the table. Julian Hill had a great practice. He had a great preseason. He's huge. He's fast. It's going to be great. It's exactly what we need opposite Jonnu Smith. Boy, was I wrong. Holy crap, was I wrong.
Yeah.
He is huge and fast. And in the preseason, huge and fast is enough to look really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah. That's very true. I'm with Josh on this. We had a good tight end and we had a bunch of trash. And what do you do with trash? You take it out. You throw it away. Julian Hill was bad. He was terrible. And you can kind of excuse that in his rookie year when he was an undrafted free agent, kind of thrown into the fire a little bit. Some rookie mistakes, some illegal procedure penalties, some holding calls. All right, fine. His second year, he should have righted those wrongs. And instead, he got worse. He regressed even more. So, and we know what Durham Smythe is at this point, and it's nothing that can't be easily replaced.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did forget a name, Hayden Rucci. I don't think he played this year, but he is, I believe, under contract through 2027, I want to say. But it's a lot like Tanner Connor. This is a developmental player. So I don't think it would have affected you guys' opinions on the tight end room. Overall, though, I do think this goal, like the goal of the offseason, should be to replace either Jonnu Smith or Julian Hill, leaving the other as a pure depth role and in competition with Connor and Rucci. Ideally, I'd like to get rid of both of them. I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. I think this room was, aside from Jonnu Smith, very disappointing in 2024. In terms of player type, I do think Miami needs to find someone who at a very baseline level can be physical as a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's at a very baseline. It doesn't I don't care if he can catch. I don't care if he's this fantastic pass blocker. No, I just want somebody who will be a physical player in the run game. And while upgrading the interior offensive line, I think that is extremely important. I'm right there with you, Keith. I think that is number one on the list in terms of things that need to be addressed. The tight end position is important too.
Oh, of course.
And it's not just because, we need somebody opposite Jonnu to get catches. It's also because of that run game that we have. Mm-hmm. And because of the way that we run the ball, a lot of times to the outside, it is up to the tight ends to, do their job and sustain blocks and get downfield. So the good news is, of all this, is Jonnu Smith is a clear starter and is a passable blocker. But the bad news is he's already under contract, or he's only under contract for one more season, and he's on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah.
So this leaves Miami, I think, with a few options. They can either find someone to simply complement Jonnu Smith and be physical in the run game, like I said, or they can try to find somebody to eventually take up the starting role from Jonnu. Personally, the sooner Miami can re-sign Jonnu Smith, I think the better.
Mm-hmm.
But even with him under contract, there is still a need for that high-end talent at the position. Based on what I've seen in this in a meh tight end free agency class, I would say go to the draft for it. And I would invest in a premium pick at this position.
What is premium pick to you? Top two,
premium.
Top three?
Now, I'm not saying exactly first round. We have, I believe...
And I meant top 2 rounds, not
we
top
have 5 picks in the first 4 rounds. I think one of those should be spent on a tight end. And that still leaves a lot of room to get a safety, to get interior offensive line, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know we went back and forth a little bit about whether or not the Dolphins should use their first round pick on a tight end. I'm obviously against it. I've been on the record for that. Love the 2 tight ends the Dolphins could draft with that 13th overall pick. I love both those guys, but man, I just can't pull the trigger on that. And you're right, this is a lackluster free agency class. So I think we need to probably go to the draft, use the 2nd round pick or the 3rd, maybe one of the 4th on the tight end, and bring in a guy that can kind of learn under Jonnu. I agree with you there.
Now,
Taylor.
would you guys lean more towards a better blocker that has receiving upside, like maybe a good collegiate blocker that's maybe got some height and some speed that you can develop, or would you lean into what our offense is seemingly wants to do? And more of a reception type that can hopefully learn to block a little bit.
Well, I think this is the first year where Mike McDaniel actually learned how to use a tight end in a receiving type of role. So I think what we're looking for is a guy who's a good blocker first and foremost, and maybe a guy who has the physical tools to develop as a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would more so look towards, which lends itself to, getting a steal in the 4th round or something like that. A guy who was mostly a blocker, but it's like, oh, well, he can run like the wind and he's got great hands. He just wasn't used that way in college.
Mhm.
Our Darnell Washington type.
Yes.
Tight end who plays for the
Jesus.
Steelers in Georgia.
I've
A
never
fantastic
wanted a
blocker.
player. I've never wanted a player more in my
Yeah, me
life.
too. I wanted him badly in that draft.
And we passed on him twice.
Yep.
And the thing about Darnell Washington is he hasn't necessarily like broke out yet. But there is something about him that is very intriguing as a receiver.
And he flashes with the Steelers at times too. Like he'll make a
Yeah.
play and it's like, oh, that guy is a beast. Just let him go, let him cook. Yeah, so I think definitely think it's a position of need, Taylor. Like, we can't go into the season with, we can't go into the season with Jonnu Smith and a bunch of just the dudes at the tight end position this year. We need to start getting younger, more talented, better pedigreed players at that position. So we're going to move on to Anthony's position of need. Take it away, Anthony.
Yeah, proud to say I got the wide receiver room, which was a little bit of a challenge because there's a lot of questions around this room.
Yeah.
3 questions in particular. The biggest elephant in the room is what do you do with Tyreek Hill, which we've talked about quite a bit, and I'll address that first. The next question I saw was, do the Dolphins want a big physical receiver? Now, we could think all day that they need a big physical receiver, but do they actually want one? So I'll address like the wants and needs around whether or not a big physical receiver is still a thing in the NFL, and it's something that the Dolphins could look to do. And then my last question was, where is the depth? Do we have any depth worth bringing back, right? We had Malik Washington as a wide receiver 3 last year. Is this a guy I could see being the wide receiver 3 going forward? Do we need a new one? So let's start with Tyreek. The only way I am trading a wide receiver or even recommending to the GM, which is the role I'm playing today, the only way I'm walking into Chris Greer's office with this idea of trading Tyreek Hill is if we are getting a big physical receiver back. Are we getting the only one I even know who's available is T. Higgins. Are we getting a T. Higgins back, right? Are we getting a guy who is 6 foot plus, who can high point a ball and is unhappy with his current situation and wants to move on, right? If that is not happening, then, or if there's no way for that to happen, then there's no way I'm walking into Chris Greer's office with that idea of, hey, we should trade Tyreek Hill, right? Because you just don't replace that production, regardless of how off he was this year and making business decisions. The drops were a problem. Dropped plenty of balls that put us in games or even won us games had he made the catch. I do think that Tyreek Hill is still one of the most talented wide receivers at the position in the entire league. And for a 5'10", 191-pound soaking wet player, he has the ability to high point the ball like Steve Smith did in just uncanny ways. And we just didn't see it this year. So I'm not going to go ahead and take the one down season and overreact to that and be like, he's got to go. And I understand there's a lot of offseason stuff. I understand he's eating crow on Radio Row during the Super Bowl. I understand that he's got more kids this year than he had touchdowns.
It's a wild stat, isn't it?
And listen, I understand that in his first losing season, he had a little baby B-fit on the sideline where he essentially said he didn't want to be here anymore, which he's now pulled back on. But that's my Tyreek Hill take, is if I am going to make a recommendation, it is not unless we can get another player it's not going to be the same value, obviously, but somebody who can come in here and be the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. Nothing less. Don't give me a bunch of wide receiver 3s who are going to amount to nothing, right? Like, give me a second round pick, whoop-de-doo, right? This is a 1,700-yard, 10-touchdown performer. These do not grow on trees. So certainly, as a scout, if I want to keep my job, I am not going into the GM's office and being like, hey, you have to trade the 1,700-yard wide receiver because he said a couple things you don't like in the media.
I mean, that's fair. That's a fair take.
Not going to happen.
So, Anthony, I've actually softened my stance on Tyreek Hill. Initially it was just get him out of here. Here's your plane ticket. I will drive you to the airport. That's how I felt right after the season was over. I've softened my stance on that. I've actually come around to your side on that. You can't just. That being said, Tyreek, if you're listening, dude, shut up.
Yes, for the love of
God.
God.
Up.
Stop talking.
Stop. With all your
Yeah,
I'm not even
us.
gonna mention the stuff he's been saying. Like dude.
All right,
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Can I, Anthony, can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
So I think I'm with you 1,000,000%, right? I think it is very easy to overreact to a down season that was marred by injuries, that had 4 different quarterbacks, 3 of which are high school level quality, maybe, right? Fine. Offensive line problems. I mean, the list goes on. I will say the one reason I am an advocate for change is not just for the sake of change, but it's because I'm tired of this offense having redundancy at every position, right? And if we can, to your point, and only if we can make sure to get a 1A or 1B type receiver that breaks the mold from everything else that we have, then I'm running as fast as I can to fax, I think is what they still do nowadays, in that trade request. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we'll talk more names in later episodes, of course. We're just setting the foundation here today. I definitely have more names than T, but we've mentioned T before, so I felt like it was an easy one to bring up.
It was safe. Yeah.
Yes. All right, so let's talk about the depth that we have, or the lack of depth that we have.
Yeah.
Malik Washington, amazingly enough, played 14 games this year, fellas. I didn't realize he played 14 games because he only really performed in 4 of them, and that was the last 4 games of the season. He put up 16 catches for 169 yards in the last 4 games, which is pretty good for. I'll get into league statistics in a second, but I can tell you from having looked at league statistics, that is in the upper percentile for a third wide receiver. In fact, if he had put up those numbers the full season, he would have had 700 yards. Now that's unrealistic.
Wow.
Third wide receivers don't get 700 yards, but that's the type of pace he was putting on in the last 4 games of the year. Behind him, though, we had 5 wide receivers who combined for 181 yards on the year.
Yowza.
Ooh-wee. We're talking River Craycraft, Odell Beckham, D. Eskridge, Grant Dubose, and Robbie Chosen. That doesn't even bring up names like Braxton Berrios, who didn't even get a freaking catch this year.
Wow.
Or any number of... Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
How did injuries factor in? Like, how many games did some of those guys play? Just out of curiosity.
None of them played over 50% of the season.
Yeah.
I think River came the closest. Yeah.
I think Berrios got hurt in the Colts game.
Yeah, Berrios got hurt early. Craycraft was hurt in the
Craycraft was out most of the season, right?
Yeah.
I think he played in I think it was around 8 games. I didn't write it down.
Wow, that's more than I thought. In my mind, Craycraft only played 2 or 3 games. That's crazy.
And I know
played, Robbie Chosen played the 1 game and then he got cut because he didn't block on the play.
Yeah.
So bad.
And then Grant Dubose,
Dubose got a concussion.
He did a bad concussion, but I was thinking about the Bills game. The first Bills game, Tua hit him in stride, and Grant Dubose was not looking for the ball. It bounced off of his shoulder pad and was intercepted.
Yep.
And was intercepted.
That was the 3 interception game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was the game where Tua got hurt later on in it. But in the beginning, Tua was playing well, and he hit. Grant Dubose was running a route and was not looking for the ball.
Now, look, I feel like this guy, he has a lot of Jackson Carman in him. I think is that his name? Is that his first name, Jackson?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Dubose came from Green Bay playing no snaps, known as a blocker, which is why we brought him in, and then get thrown in because Tyreek Hill drops 4 passes in a row and Waddle can't stay on the ground when a pass gets tossed to him. And said, "Go figure it out, stupid," and it didn't work.
Yeah, so I mean, I should be kinder to him than but that drove me crazy. It bounced off of his shoulder pad. Tua hit this guy right where he needed to be hit, and he wasn't even looking for the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you running around if you're not looking for the ball? You're a wide receiver, man.
Right. So I think with the question, do we need depth? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. I mean, we had 22 catches for 181 yards from the 5 wide receivers that lined up for us behind our wide receiver 3, which was Malik Washington. I do believe Malik Washington could be a viable wide receiver 3 for this team. He doesn't have the size that we're all looking for. I could see us bringing somebody in who ends up being more sizable and having more impact in the red zone. But I thought Malik played particularly well towards the back half of the year. That being said, late round pick, there's no promises, there's no guarantees. He could just as easily be pushed aside for somebody else, maybe another rookie or whatever it is. The only other person or people on this list I would even consider looking at is River Craycraft because of his rapport with Tua.
Mm-hmm.
And then D. Eskridge because he is just a big play waiting to happen, albeit very raw, and could be a special teams contributor. Of the 5 guys behind Malik, he was the only one with a 20-plus yard play. So, yeah. Now let's get to the height thing, which is what everybody's waiting for. Does the height of the wide receiver matter? Now, for this, I looked at the playoff teams because these are the best of the best. These are the ultimate teams here. What do their wide receiver cores look like? I'm going to let you guys guess here. Taylor, if you had to guess, what percentage of the playoff teams had one of their top 2 wide receivers with a height of over 6 foot tall?
The percentage?
Yeah, what percentage of playoff teams had a over 6 foot tall wide receiver as one of their top 2?
Probably 60% of teams.
I'd say 100.
Guess. It's 100. It's 100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Every single
wow.
playoff team had at least one 6 foot tall wide receiver as one of their top 2 receivers here.
Now that's 6 foot and over, right?
6 foot
Yeah.
and over. Now,
Yeah. Okay.
the percentage of playoff teams that had a player who was 6'3" or over was 50%. But neither of the Super Bowl teams had one of their top 2 wide receivers at 6'3" or over.
Now that's higher than I would have thought, Anthony.
Crazy,
6
right?
foot, 6
That's
foot
a
3,
crazy
yeah.
stat. That's a crazy stat.
6'3" or taller. Some of the names: Nico Collins, Quentin Johnson, Keon Coleman in Buffalo is a surprising 6'4". I didn't even realize he was that tall.
Yep, Florida State guy.
Yeah,
Go Noles.
But height didn't necessarily lead to the best performers. In fact, from what I found, the best performers were in the 6'1", 6'2" range. We're talking AJ Brown in Philadelphia at 6'1". The pair of wide receivers over in the Rams with Puka and Kupp are both 6'2".
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I thought
I didn't realize
Puka was
Kupp was
like
that tall.
6. I thought Puka was 6'4" or something.
I didn't realize Cooper Kupp was that tall. I thought he was closer to like 5'10", 5'11".
It's crazy because the part about that stood out to me is that they're trying to get rid of Kupp now. And to Josh's point, where he doesn't want redundancy, is they're getting rid of a redundancy in that Puka and Kupp are the same wide receiver, right? Now Kupp obviously had much further along in his career, but from a height percentage,
one could argue that he's washed. Actually, I mean, he's not getting separation anymore.
His body is failing him. But the last one I wanted to mention in terms of height was Justin Jefferson, also 6'1".
Oh yeah.
So it's crazy to me that the 6'1", 6'2" ranges is a gold mine for wide receivers. That doesn't mean it's only those guys who are good, but a large percentage of wide receivers on the playoff teams were in that 6'1", 6'2"
Well,
range.
and if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because the average height of an NFL quarterback is 5'9", 5'10", something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So 6'1", you're, half a head taller.
Right. The only receivers we have on our roster at that height are Eazy-E and Grant Dubose. And Eazy-E has spent 3 years on the practice squad and still hasn't developed into anything. And then, of course, Grant Dubose, we just talked about, came over from the Packers and made one colossal mistake and then ended up losing the season to a concussion. So, other interesting things here. The Hill-Waddle combination was like record-settingly unprecedented in the last 2 years. And unprecedented in that they made up such a large percentage of our receiving yards in their first 2 years together that it blew away everybody else. So in 2022, they made up 64% of the receiving yards for the Miami Dolphins.
Seriously?
In 2023, 60%.
That's insane.
In fact, this year, which we consider a down year, was the only year that they were within the league average at 42%. And the league average, at least for playoff teams, was also 42% for the top two receivers on the team.
Wow.
So it goes to show that the Jonnu Smith having more involvement in the offense wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It actually led to better balance, to playoff team balance. The problem was that our top two receivers just were underutilized heavily in what they in compared to what we used them in the past. So 42% was the average, but the Philadelphia Eagles, their top two guys, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, made up for 55% of their yardage on offense. The other big one that stood out to me was the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. They also made up 55% of the receiving yards there. Teams where it didn't seem to matter, this will surprise nobody, Kansas City Chiefs. Only 26% of their receiving yards came from their top two receivers. They're really a spread out team. More than anybody else
went to their tight end.
Yeah. So I wanted to point that out because I wanted to point out that there's a lot of like just misconception as to there's only one way to build a team, right? You have to have the tall receiver and the small receiver and okay tight end. The playoff teams were all built fairly differently. The numbers kind of went in a wide variety of different ranges as to how their top two wide receivers and their tight end, which makes up like the top three, was kind of built out. So if I'm going into Chris Greer's office and I'm making a recommendation to him, it's yes, we do need a taller receiver to make some meaningful contribution to this team, but it doesn't need to be necessarily one of our top two wide receivers. I think that Hill and Waddle have shown in the past 2 years prior to last year that they can more than make up for their height just by working in the scheme as well as they do. And I think a lot of that comes to coaching. We weren't able to counter the two high safeties this year. We made little to no progress on countering that, which was a big problem. So do we need depth in the wide receiver room? 100,000%. I would love to see a very good wide receiver 3 come in that can just add some consistency to this team, enough picking up the pieces from other people's like trash cans, and not even the top of the trash can. It's like way at the bottom. They've been there for a while. Like no more Odells, no more Robbie Chosens, no more freaking Grant Duboses, right? Like bring us in a solid wide receiver 3, similar to what the Bears did for Caleb Williams last year. You know, they had DJ Moore, they brought in Keenan Allen, they drafted Roma Dunze. Like, get that third guy, and I think.
Now, would you do that in the draft? Would you go high?
I would go. So I don't know how good this wide receiver core is in this draft.
That's pretty good.
I think if it's deep, well, I don't see why not, especially if the compensation picks end up working out the way we think they are. The compensatory picks don't come out until March, I believe, but we're expecting a third, hopefully.
And a fourth. Yeah.
A third and a fourth. Yeah,
it
was supposed to be 2 3s.
Yeah. Using one of those third round picks is not a bad idea. If there's a big physical receiver there. Otherwise, I think the wide receiver free agent room is packed every year because these guys want to make money and nobody wants to pay the wide receiver 3. So I think you can find a guy and convince him to come down for a little less money with the whole there's no state income tax argument and wanting to play in South Florida and getting to be in the beaches and nightlife and all that crap. I think we have one of those very convincing, lots of convincing reasons why you would want to come to Miami. Yeah. So
a lot of what you said. Sorry, Anthony. You have anything else? I was gonna say a lot of what you said was very interesting because there was a lot of talk, and Josh, you're the one who really like pounded the table about like redundancy. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, all is good, let's just run it back. But it is interesting to hear like the playoff teams this year and how they were all different. And what I think, what I've learned from what you've went into here is that the depth is the important part. I'm a big believer in Malik Washington. I thought he was a higher draft pick than a 6th round pick. I thought he should have went 3 or 4, honestly, 3rd or 4th round. I don't know how he fell that far. So I'm a big believer in him being our wide receiver 3. That still leaves a few spots left. And exactly what you were saying, like, we cannot be going back to the OBJs, Robbie Chosen. We got to be getting guys in here that is actual quality depth, because obviously we also need it.
Yeah, I guess why I kept banging the table, right, is because you have Hill, you have Waddle, you have Malik Washington, who are all relatively the same height, right? And then you get to a point where we need, where it's third and goal, and we need 5, right? And our running game is struggling, or whatever the case is. And what do? We fade it to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Right. And we've seen it so many times over so many years with this group, with this iteration of the Miami Dolphins, that it just gets exhausting seeing that type of play that would be successful with the 50-50 type wide receiver, which is literally that was driving my entire argument for most of the season with, we need to get out of redundant type players. Stop with the small, fast guys. We have enough of them. Let's get the tall guys.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too that the size itself isn't necessarily, what do you call it? The only factor there, like how they play. I mean, if you look at AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, one's 6'1", one's 6 foot tall. But AJ Brown is 226 and plays like a monster, and Devonta Smith is 170, and if he gets hit too hard, he's probably going to need to go back into the locker room. So like, it's not necessarily all height. I mean, even another example here, Jameson Williams versus Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, St. Brown plays like an absolute beast, and Jameson plays like that glass cannon, right? So like, and Jameson's taller. So like, the height isn't always the factor. It's like, you need the guy who's built and it just has the physicality. We need somebody physical to come into the wide receiver room, because Tyreek Hill was very physical his first 2 years with us, and then this year,
finesse.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. And Malik Washington's 5'8", 191, so I don't think he's going to be physical.
Soaking wet.
No, but to Taylor's point, that dude caught 126 balls his last year at Virginia. Like, he can play.
Oh, for sure.
He can ball. And also, Josh, to your point, I've always hated the fade pass, even to the tall wide receivers, even to a Mike Evans. I've never liked the fade. That should be phased out of the Dolphins' offense completely.
Faded out of the offense.
Faded out of the Dolphins. Oh man.
You're welcome, folks. Tip your waiters.
There he is. I've always been a bigger fan of the back shoulder pass. Actually, I think a well executed back shoulder is impossible.
And we have a quarterback that can do it well.
Yeah. Mahomes throws that thing like it's impossible to cover it. It's crazy.
Remember, like Rodgers throwing that to Jordy Nelson back in Green Bay? Like, nobody could stop it.
Yeah.
Speaking
Michael says wide receivers and running backs aren't huge. And they all seem too thin. Yeah, I think that's what kind of get into is that we need a bulkier.
Yeah, we need a different body type, right?
It would be great if Easy E would just get it together, but it doesn't seem like it's going to.
Yeah, because he fits that need, right?
Yeah, he fits that mold.
But to Keith's point, right? Do we think that will Aaron Rodgers will be signed by the Fins? I hope not.
Yeah,
I will. I would quit the podcast, fellas, if that happened, because I would be miserable. I would be miserable the whole time.
I think there's a less.
This was 5 years ago. I might have different feelings, but I just saw Aaron Rodgers play this entire last year. I know he beat the crap out of Dolphins in Week 17.
It's not even about his play, though, right? Yeah. It's about how he destroyed that team.
Yeah, he's a distraction that the Dolphins don't need. He's a distraction on a team full of distractions. See, Hill, Tyreek.
Play for the Raiders, yeah. The Raiders
that's a perfect fit.
All right, so guys, we're getting close to we're over an hour and a half now. So we're gonna move over to Taylor for the last position group here.
All right, I'm gonna try to somewhat fly through this, but the final position group we have, which, by the way, not to prolong this, I just want to give us a quick rundown of what we've covered so far. So Josh covered the backup QB position, which is QB2, QB3. Keith, you covered the offensive line from the guard room, an overhaul there, and a backup swing tackle. I ended up covering the tight end room, tight end 2 opposite of Jonnu Smith, and tight end depth. And Anthony, you just went over the wide receiver room, including a physical wide receiver who can make contested catches, wide receiver depth, and the old Tyreek Hill conundrum, which surely will be going on for the next few weeks. Now, the last room we're going to talk about here today on the offense is the running back room. And something all four of us brought this up, a power back for short yard situations. And what I also threw in here is someone to eventually compete for RB1 or RB2. And real quick, going through the stats, Devon Achane will be 23 at the start of next season, played 17 games, 705 snaps. He had 203 carries, first on the team, 907 yards, first on the team, 4.5 yards per attempt, and he had 6 rushing touchdowns, which was also first on the team. Which, by the way, you go back to last year and Raheem Mostert's touchdown total. It's a little sad to look at. But
Wasn't it 21 last year?
I think combined it was 21.
Yeah.
And Achane had 12 combined because he had 6 receiving touchdowns, which was tied for second on the team. He had 78 catches, by the way, which is absolutely wild. He had 592 yards and 7.6 yards per attempt. He had a pass blocking grade of 15.7. Granted, he wasn't doing that too often. He was the one receiving.
1.5 or 5.0?
15.7 was his pass blocking grade.
Wait, that's good or bad?
That's bad.
That's pretty bad.
That's real bad.
That's out of 100.
But again, that's not what he's here for. He is here to catch the ball, and he did that very well. Considering the talent in his production, this is one of the best contract situations we have on the team, at least from a talent standpoint. Achane will probably be looking for a new deal after next year, and he'll probably get it. We then have Raheem Mostert, who will be 33 at the start of next season. He played in 13 total games, 278 total snaps, 85 carries, 278 yards rushing, 3.3 yards per carry. He had 2 touchdowns, 19 receptions, 161 yards receiving, 8.5 yards per catch, and 0 receiving touchdowns. He had a 56.8 pass blocking grade. There is a chance we see Mostert as a cap casualty this offseason. It's not a huge contract, but considering his reduced role in 2024 and his age, it's hard to imagine keeping him around with a nearly $44 million cap number, especially if it's just in a RB3 kind of role. And last up, I'm not going to go through Jeff Wilson Jr. just because he didn't have that many carries to begin with, but I do want to talk about Jalen Wright real quick. He will be 22 at the start of next season. He played in 15 total games, 171 yards. He had 68 carries, 249 rush yards, 3.7 yards per attempt, 0 rushing touchdowns. And here's where it gets interesting and what I'm going to bring up here in a few minutes. He had 3 receptions for 8 yards and 2.7 yards per attempt. And he did have a 51.6 pass blocking grade on PFF. My note on right here is like Achane, he has a really cheap contract number. And he will likely be here for quite a bit. So before I get into the whole assessment, how to fix things, I just want to hear from you guys what you think.
We need a short yardage back. We need a guy who can get us that yard. Raheem Mostert was that guy 2 years ago. Like you said, but I still don't think that was a role that he's naturally suited to. It just kind of played out that way, and somehow he was able to be what we needed him to be. But like you said, Taylor, he's going to be 33 years old. If we do bring him back, it's going to be in a limited role. We need a bruiser. We need a Mike Allstott. We need
that's a good name.
Mike Allstott.
Yeah.
Good name.
a Brandon Jacobs. We need a guy who's
That's everybody's go-to.
We need a fridge, right?
Yeah.
Fridge Perry, right?
We need a guy who's just gonna pound it up in there.
What was the Browns guy on the Madden cover? Peyton Hillis. We need a Peyton
Peyton Hillis.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the 1 year wonder.
And we don't have who was our quarterback. The tush push isn't an option for us.
God, no.
So
No, God, please.
yeah, so it's not an option for us.
H.A.
So,
Unless-
taking the ball.
Well, yeah, unless we do the Wildcat tush push.
yeah,
Right.
but that can only work so many times.
You
So
need guards for that.
yeah,
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah, we
You
do.
really do.
Yeah, we do.
I will say this
Um,
though, I do think we have a great foundation, right? We have foundational pieces in Achane and Wright, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I think Achane's that Swiss Army Taylor. To your point, you've said it a million times. You can play him at wide receiver. You can play him as the X wide receiver. You can play him as slot wide receiver. He can run. He can maybe not block based on his grade.
I'm
and
glad
you
you're the one saying it this week because I don't have to say it later.
But
Yeah.
he's also a guy, in my opinion, Josh. I would like to see him get less touches. I don't want to see him break down. He's not a big guy. I'd like to see him cede some touches to a potential power back, cede more touches to Jalen Wright.
Sure. Yeah.
I think
I mean, I
help
don't
keep him
think that he
fresher.
should. I don't think that he should cede or lose, if you will, the total snap counts, right? Because if we have a power back or we're giving carries to Jalen Wright, which I think Jalen Wright in a full off season and a second season in an NFL weight room, it's going to change his body type. It's going to make him a lot better. But you don't take in my opinion, you don't take a talent like HN off the field. You reduce his touches, to your point, to reduce wear and tear on his body.
Yeah,
but you put him out there because he's a threat.
He's also missed time with injuries in both of his seasons thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Wright's also 5'11", 210. So
yeah, he's
kind of like I'm kind of spoiling a bit where I'm gonna go in my assessment, but
get in there. Get in there.
Yeah.
Get in there, Taylor. What's your assessment? Let's go.
So
I can't wait. How are we fixing this, man?
I do think the running back room is a little more tricky than, let's say, the tight end room. Achane and Wright are the clear-cut starters here. They're going to get the carries here. Achane is the clear-cut number one. And despite what I still think is a disappointing season for Wright, there is a very good chance he ends up being the RB2 going in next season. And I still think he has a lot of upside. As I said in the stat overview, there's a chance Miami does move on from Raheem Mostert, and I do think they can move on from Jeff Wilson Jr. They let him walk in free agency. There's a definite need for a short yardage back in this offense, though. The team struggled mightily in those situations this past season and ranked among the worst teams in the NFL in short yardage, 3rd/4th down situations. The second worst success rate on 3rd and 1, and I'm getting all this from Sports Illustrated, by the way. The running back room, however, is dictated by a few other things outside of necessarily their control. And that's why I think it's a little more tricky than, let's say, the tight end room. Because I do think the interior offensive line and the tight end room will affect how this running back room goes. And my big takeaway here is Jalen Wright isn't really a receiving back. I think his first rookie year in the NFL kind of shows that. He had 3 receptions for 8 yards in 2024, while at Tennessee, his best season receiving was in 2023, where he had 22 receptions and 141 yards receiving. He did have 1,000 yards on the ground, rushing on 137 attempts. So I kind of came into this like, we need a power back. But looking into it, I've kind of changed my mind a bit. And more so like, let's let Jalen Wright take this role. He has the frame for it. He has traits. He has elite footwork, in my opinion. He has breakaway speed. And I think he can get in there on those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations. That being said, we still need depth at this position. So my solution would be, let's get a cheap running back. I'm not naming names, but there was a few names we mentioned in the running back grades 2 weeks ago. Be sure to check that out, that I think we could end up getting. And maybe a late round pick. I wouldn't draft anybody before round 3, though. That would be
that's
the
high,
absolute
though.
earliest.
For a running
That's
back,
what I'm saying.
that's high, dude.
I'm even pushing in round 3. I would go round 4 through 7 at the most.
I wouldn't be touching a running back until 5.
Yeah,
at the earliest,
same here.
man.
We have too many.
especially in this class.
And because don't forget too, if we allocate the resources that we all think we should to the offensive guard position, for example, all of our running backs are instantly better, and that's before that's before Jalen Wright puts on more weight in an NFL offseason and learns to do the things that he needs to do. That's before pulling in a veteran as a RB3. We upgrade the offensive guards, our running game instantly gets much better, in my opinion.
And that's not to say like, oh, we get I'm not saying 6th-round picks are scrubs. I'm just saying like, oh, it's not like saying we go that far in and we end up getting like a 6th, 7th-round pick who end up being RB4 on the team at best or anything. Because this running back class in the draft is loaded with talent. We should be able to find somebody in rounds 4 through 7 that maybe isn't getting a whole lot of playing time this year. Like you were talking about, Josh, Achane will find a way to get touches. Somehow, some way, he will be the leading person on this team in terms of touches. And Jalen Wright will most likely get a lot of carries. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of room. But there's room for you to pick up a few guys in the draft potentially in rounds 4 through 7 who might have some upside to eventually take a larger role in the offense here in the next few seasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, Keith. I was just gonna jump in for a sec. I actually love that plan because I am a huge Achane fan. I want to see him just continue to carry that rock. And I think Jalen Wright, while he did hit a rookie wall last year for sure, to Taylor's point, he has the size, the speed, the traits, everything you want from that position. So I think just hold off on this. It feels like the least important need on the offense, but you guys tell me.
Agreed.
Yeah. I would say, man, I never looked at Jalen Wright and thought he could be our short yardage guy, but I also didn't realize he was as big as you said he was, Taylor.
And still fast.
Yeah.
So that means if he adds on another 10, let's call it 12 pounds, right? Just making this up. Second offseason in NFL weight room, he goes from a 4.3 to a 4.4. That dude is still fast, right?
Yeah.
Also, I mean, to Irving's point here too. I mean, the positions we talked about of need and having a blocking tight end and better guards would really help any running back to pick up those yardage.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Irving makes a great point right there, and that's really my end cap to the running back room conversation. Is just it's what you guys have been saying. You improve the offensive line, you improve the tight end room. This is less of a need. It still is one because we will most likely have maybe 3 potentially if we keep Mostert, but most likely only 2 running backs on this roster. We need to get people.
Yeah.
So
it
will be addressed in free agency draft.
Yeah. And I know we're getting close to time here, but I did want to take a quick second and shout out Pete, Michael, and Irving in the chat. You guys held it down all show. Really, really appreciate you guys for joining the show. Hope you guys we'll see you next week too.
Yeah. So we are getting up to we're getting up to the 2-hour mark here, guys. And we didn't get to take from the deep end tonight. We will get to it next week. I will personally try to be a little less long-winded in my assessment of the defense.
Sorry, guys.
But so guys, we're going to be doing defense next week. Same thing we did tonight. We're just going to be going through positions of need on defense. I don't think it's going to be as dire as it was on offense. I think again, this is kind of the theme of this offseason thus far. We've been focusing a lot on the offense because the offense was, I think, our biggest problem this season. So we did offense tonight. If you came in late, or if you haven't, if you came in late, or if you missed some parts, go back and watch it. We put on a great show tonight. Lots of great stuff, great stats that everybody put together. So I'm going to go through final thoughts here. Josh, I'll start with you.
Yeah, again, can't say it enough. Really appreciate those that stayed with us I know this is a lot longer show than we normally do. Really appreciate you guys in the chat for hanging with us and keeping it rolling. Hope to see you guys next week and every week thereafter. But Really love doing this with you guys. I was very excited for this week's show. I'm very excited for next week's show. This is the kind of stuff that I love digging my teeth into and sinking my claws in and really analyzing the team as if my voice and my opinion matters, which I know it does to the three of you and to our lovely chat and fans, but I'm just kidding. But it was fun, like kind of gamifying it a little bit when I was doing my research and putting together all of my notes for the show, like kind of pretending I was part of the franchise, talking to the GM and going through that exercise. So really fun, really great. And can't wait to do it next week again.
Yep. We'll be back next week. Taylor, final thoughts.
I think I just want to end this with this exercise has been really fun so far. I'm excited to get into the defensive discussion next week. But what is really also interesting about this is an ever-changing subject because of whatever happens in free agency, because of whatever we end up doing with like Tyreek Hill, because that will create a new position in need, right? So whatever we say here, whatever we say next week is not necessarily set in stone.
Yeah. This is most definitely fluid. And look, Tyreek Hill could be traded tomorrow. And then we have a whole new discussion on our hands.
Oh my God, we would have an emergency podcast in my opinion. Yeah.
Anthony, final thoughts?
Yeah, man, I didn't have to imagine I was talking to Chris Greer. I got on the phone with him. We had some really deep conversations about this roster. It was intense. It was good. No, it really was fun. I know way more about wide receiver heights than I've ever known before.
There you go.
Pretty crazy.
Hey, that's what we bring to you, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I had a blast. Offense was cool to look at. Defense is going to be cool to look at next week, but I can't wait for the actual transactions to start happening.
Oh, me too.
Boys,
Yeah.
It's still a month away till free agency starts, but man, I'm getting just amped up for it. So if you are having fun listening to us talk about this stuff, please like, subscribe, and get in that chat like Irving and Michael and Pete did today, because we love talking with you boys.
Absolutely.
And girls.
And Josh, the rando guy. That's definitely not me.
It's definitely you.
So like these guys said, if you like what you saw tonight, please like, subscribe. Leave some comments. We love to see comments on our videos, and we're going to be doing defense next week, and we have a bunch more great shows planned throughout this off season. Just because the Dolphins season's over doesn't mean that the Fins forecast season is over. We go year round. So again, like, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week with our defensive needs. You guys have a lovely night.